Hello and welcome to the lecture number one of Anatomy and Physiology. This is for first term, and I'm recording these lectures as adjunct professor Navy, Canada, Academy of Cosmetology and Massage Therapy, Alberta, Canada. These lectures are taken from the book by Susan G. Salvo from Massage Therapy, and uh, the lecture today is about the introduction to the human body cells, tissues, and the body compass. This is basically chapter 18 of the book. We are going to discuss the basics of anatomy and physiology and the cells. Uh, we are going to define anatomy and physiology and discuss medical terminology. We'll place the level of organizations of an organisms in a hierarchy from bottom to top or from simpler to complex, and discuss the cellular anatomy, the cellular processes, and cellular metabolism. Uh, if you look at the basic terminology, it is really very crucial to understanding anatomy and physiology because most of the terms they are in Greek and Latin, and the word anatomy itself is a Latin word which is taken from ana and tomi, so to cut up and see and to study, and physiology is the study of function. So we are going to discuss the basic terms of anatomy and physiology. Anatomy and physiology are inseparable because the structure or the form, it follows the function. So when you know the structure, you know the function. What is the function of that structure? So the nomenclature is really very important because for any field like in medicine, in anatomy, and in physiology, in physiotherapy, in massage therapy, if you know the right nomenclature, if you know what are the roots and origin of the word, then you can easily understand and justify what is meant by that particular letter. Anatomy is the study of structures and their positional relationships. Sometimes we need to define the structure, that what is the structure, how it is formed, and sometimes we need to talk about the relationship of the structure with other structures. Physiology is the study of how the body functions are in normal processes, but when there is something wrong, when something is pathological, then we call it as the study of processes of the disease, that is for pathophysiology and pathology. Now, the medical terminology, it has one or more parts, like it have a root, a prefix, and suffix. So prefixes and suffixes alter the meaning of the root. For example, root is the main part or its function. For example, cardi means heart. The prefix is before the root. For example, pre means before or front. Let's talk about prehistoric time. So that shows the time that was before the history was written. Suffix is placed after a root. Example is, for example, actomy means to cut out, usually in surgery, like dissectomy or discectomy or meniscectomy or some other thing. So just like histectomy or hysterectomy, so these are to cut up and remove. Talking about the levels of organization, the hierarchy based on the level of complexity, there is the chemical foundation or the chemical level. Then the chemicals, they combine to form the cellular level, and cellular levels, when the cells they are performing a similar function, they become a tissue. And a distinct tissue makes an organ, a multiple organ makes an organ system, and then the whole organism. In this picture we can see from the atomic level, we are going to the chemical level, that is molecule. Then from molecules we are moving towards more complex structures, that are cellular levels, and then we are moving to tissue levels, organ levels, and all the other levels. Now the cells, they are the fundamental unit of all living organisms. They are the simplest form of life. They are self-sustaining units, that they can live independently. They are considered to be the building blocks of the human body, and surprisingly, water makes up to 60 to 80% of the cells. In this picture we are looking at a typical cell, and we are looking at all the intracellular organelles and the extracellular processes of the cell. Now what we are looking over here is the cytoskeleton. These rigid bar-like structures. They perform, they provide, or they form the structural elements or integrity of the cell. Then we are also looking at some other important structures, intracellular structures. Uh, the nuclear membrane, which is porous over here, and the nucleus itself. Then the nucleolus. We are also looking at, these are the GTOs, or Golgi mitochondrions. Uh, Sorry about the GTOs, the mitochondrions, and then we are looking at the Golgi body over here. These are the Golgi bodies. We are looking at the cell membrane, or it is also called as plasma lemma. Then we are looking at these ciliated processes, or cilia. We are looking at smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and we are also looking at the rough endoplasmic reticulum. The only difference is these dots over here. These are special processes on the surfaces, and we are also looking at the cytoplasm. Inside the cell, there is a fluid that is called as the cytoplasm, and we are looking at the centrioles and free ribosomes. So these free ribosomes, they are present on the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Now the components of the cell, there is the cell membrane. Basically the cell membrane acts as a barrier. So it basically it separates the interior environment or interior milieu from the external environment. So the inner environment of the cell becomes a closed cavity, uh, yet this cell membrane is selectively permeable, or sometimes we refer to it as semi-permeable membrane. The cytoplasm and definitely the organelles that we discussed already, the endoplasmic reticulum, whether it is rough or it is smooth, the ribosomes, the Golgi body, the mitochondria, the lysosomes, the centrioles, and the nucleus. Cell membrane separates cytoplasm from external environment. It is semi-permeable. Only some materials may pass through it. May contain projections such as microvilli, cilia, and flagella. These are appendages or processes that exvaginate from the cell membrane. Cytoplasm, it's a gel-like intracellular fluid. Protoplasm provides the nutrition, supports organelles, also called as cytosol. The organelles, endoplasmic reticulum, network of membranous channels. It transports material. It has two types, rough and smooth. The ribosomes, small granules of ribonucleic acid and protein. They synthesize protein and may bind to the endoplasmic reticulum. The Golgi bodies, they pack and store proteins and lipid until needed. So they are just like some packaging industries in the cell, and cell packing and shipping plant. Mitochondria, it's a site of cellular respiration and provides ATP. So adenosine triphosphate, this is the fuel, this is the energy of the cell. So ATP is required, and sometimes the mitochondria is also referred to as the power plant or powerhouse of the cell, because it provides all the necessary energy that is required for the normal functioning of the cell. The lysosomes, it engulfs the pathogens, cellular debris, and other organelles, contains the digestive enzymes. So lysosomes, they have, uh, you can say, somewhat protective function, and they are there to help wear and tear of the cell. Centrioles, they are paired tubular structure that helps cells to divide. The nucleus, this is basically, you can say, the CPU of the cell or the brain of the cell. Large organelle contains the DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, and ribonucleic acid. Has nucleolus for protein synthesis, acts as the control center or brain of the cell. It is important to know that this nucleus, because it is considered to be the brain of the cell, so it orders the cell, uh, like different organelles of the cell, to create the proteins, and the sequence of how to make the protein, or the codes, they are embedded in the DNA. Talking about the cellular processes, there can be active and there can be passive processes. Definitely passive are those which are not energy dependent, and active, they will require the energy. Now, If you look at the passive processes, they do not require energy. For example, the diffusion, which is sometimes referred to as the facilitated diffusion, the filtration and osmosis. Let's talk about diffusion. Movement of molecules from an area of high concentration to low concentration. So the concentration gradient, it plays a vital role. It continues until the distribution is equal, and sometimes they can be facilitated diffusion, uses a carrier protein or channels to facilitate the diffusion. If you look at this picture, we can see if there is a lump of sugar that is being added to the water, then slowly when it dissolves, it evenly spreads from the region of higher concentration to the region of lower concentration. This is basically facilitated diffusion. Uh, this is the carrier protein because it carries the molecule or the ion, and it help him to pass through. Passive processes, osmosis and filtration. Osmosis is the movement of a pure solvent, that is water, through a membrane from an area of low concentration to high concentration. And this concentration is basically of some molecule. So water, the content of water will be uh, less on one side and more on the other side. So what will happen, that the water will try to be equally distributed on both sides of the membrane. So continues until two concentrations equalize. Filtration is the movement of particles across a membrane due to pressure. Now if you look at this, this is side A, side B, so dilute solution and concentrated solution, because the number of uh, particles are more over here. So what will happen, that the water is going to get to the other side. There's this force of attraction of these molecules for the water. Uh, Active processes, they require energy. Examples are active transport, endocytosis, exocytosis, and transcytosis. Endo stands for inside, cytosis is for cell, exo stands for outside, and cytosis again for cell, and trans means through, so through cell or out of the cell or into the cell. Active transport by pumps. So just like you pump water with your pumps at your homes, so in the cell they follow the same principles, like you need energy to carry, and it is against the concentration gradient. So carrier molecules, membrane pumps move ions in and out of the cell. Ions attach, energy is released, and ions are pumped into the cells. Examples are muscle cells and nerve cells. Active transport by vesicles. Vesicles are small sacs used to transport substances. They can sometimes be fluid filled or they can be empty. Endocytosis, transport of material into the cell, and exocytosis, out of the cell. Now, endocytosis, membranes forms around targeted molecule, traps them in vesicles, and transports them into the cell. They can be phagocytosis or they can be pinocytosis. So phagocytosis is basically cell eating. So as if the cell eats something, brings target into the cell to lysosomes, which it digests, and pinocytosis targets the substances, that is the liquid. Metabolism, sum of total physical and chemical processes that occurs in an organism, they are collectively called as the metabolism. Needed for growth, repair and contraction. Two phases, anabolism and catabolism. Anabolism is the constructive phase. Small molecules like amino acids, they are the building blocks, are converted to large molecules of protein. In catabolism, there is destructive phase. The large molecules like carbohydrates are converted into smaller molecules like glucose. Now talking about the body tissues, membranes and body systems, we are going to discuss tissue types, tissue repair and tissue types of the membranes. We are going to discuss also or define homeostasis and name all the body systems, outlining their basic anatomy and physiology. Tissues. So a group of similar cells that act together to perform specific function, they are collectively called as tissues. There are four typical types of the tissues in the body. The rest of the tissues, they are made from these basic four types. And these are the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the muscle tissue, and the nervous tissue. Now, if you look at this cross section of the leg, you can see a lot of tissues. Like you are looking at the skin, you are looking at the epithelial tissue, the bony tissue, the skeletal muscle tissue, uh, the blood vessel tissue. So, and even the fascia also. So these are different types of tissues. Now, talking about the embryological tissues, ectoderm is the outer layer, mesoderm is the middle layer, and endoderm is the inner layer. So ecto is from outside, endo is from inside, and meso is for between. So from the outer layer, the nervous system, the special senses, and the skin, they are formed. From mesoderm or the middle layer, muscles, blood. Blood is a specialized form of connective tissue. Then the connective tissues, and from endoderm, linings and coverings of the body. Now if you look at this, the embryological tissue layers, you can see how they are formed from ectoderm, from mesoderm, and from the endoderm. All the structures that are formed by these layers. Epithelial tissue, it lines or covers internal and external surfaces such as skin, organs, vessels, cavities, and digestive tracts. Its functions is protection, absorption, secretion, and excretion. Okay, so if you look at the types of epithelium, we can look for endothelium. They can be glandular and epithelium and uh, simple or stratified. So endothelium covers the internal surfaces of the blood and lymphatic vessels. The glandular epithelium in endocrine and exocrine glands contains the secretory cells for secretions. They are classified into simple epithelium, that is one cell thick, stratified two or more cell thick. Subclassification of the epithelium, they can be squamous, cuboidal, or columnar. Squamous is when the cells are arranged in the flag sheet, cuboidal in the cube shaped, and columnar in the column shaped. Now you can look at the epithelial tissue, their types and their locations. Like the epithelial tissue is present in different areas like the GIT and other organs. Connective tissue, uh, from the name one can infer that this connective tissue is serving the purpose to connect the tissues. So most abundant and diverse tissue functions is to first of all is to connect, then to support, then transport and defense. There are four types of the connective tissue: the fibers, the bone, the cartilage, and liquid. Yet I told you that the blood is a specialized connective tissue. So we are looking at the types and locations of the connective tissues. In the bones, we can see; in the cartilage, we can look at the ligaments, and we are also looking at the other connective tissues, like the fat is also a connective tissue. Fibrous connective tissue. It is the packing material of the body, attaches the skin to underlying structures. It has types like loose, which is areolar, uh, adipose connective tissue, reticular tissue, and dense connective tissue. Loose fibrous connective tissue, widely distributed in the body, little tensile strength, and forms subcutaneous layer beneath the skin, which is also called as the superficial fascia of the skin. Adipose tissue, fatty tissue, insulates, cushions the structures and provides fuel reserves. The fats, they are good stores of energy, so whenever there is need for the energy, as if somebody is fasting or starvation, uh, in starvation you need your body eats or break down the fats to make the ATPs or glucose. Reticular and dense fibrous connective tissue. It provides the framework of bones and some organs. They can be dense connective tissue, compact, strong, inelastic fibers. There are two types: irregular and regular. Dense irregular fibers resist pulling forces in several directions, for example, deep fascia, dermis, and periosteum. And dense regular fibrous connective tissue is having more strength than dense irregular tissue, resist pulling forces in two directions, for example, ligaments and tendons. So they are all forms of the connective tissue. The bone tissue is also called as the osseous tissue, hardest type of connective tissue, permeated by blood vessels and nerves. Definitely, there's a nutrient artery to every bone. Almost every bone has a nutrient artery that provides the blood and takes away the waste products. And these are pain sensitive because of the presence of the nerves. They are enclosed in periosteum. It is the outermost layer of the bones. There are types like compact and spongy. The compact is really very when the osteocytes they are closely packed, and in spongy there is this tubercular like network of these osteocytes. So spongy is more light and compact is more dense and it's heavy as compared to the spongy. In compact bone, harder or hard outer shell of the bone. In spongy or cancellous bones, inner lattice-like part of the bone. Okay, so talking about the cartilage, it is avascular. There is no blood vessel in the cartilage. It is tough and protective. Uh, there are different types like hyaline cartilage, the fibrocartilage, and the elastic cartilage. Now, the cartilage, although it is very tough, but it is subjected to wear and tear, and it basically decreases the amount of friction between the two or three bony partners that are coming into contact to make a joint. And the most resistant of this hyaline cartilage to wear and tear is the hyaline cartilage. Now, elastic, it is the hyaline cartilage itself is elastic, it's rubbery and smooth. Most common type covers articulating surfaces of the bones, connects ribs to the sternum, supports the nose, trachea, and the part of the larynx. The fibrocartilage, it has greatest tensile strength, creates discs between the vertebra and the knee. Elastic cartilage, we can feel this cartilage and look for this in epiglottis, part of the larynx, in ears, and in nose. So it is very soft and it is very pliable as compared to the rest of the cartilages. Blood, it is red and it is basically composed of RBCs, the red blood cells, and WBCs, platelets, and the plasma, which is the liquid of the blood. So it transports respiratory gases. It takes oxygen from the lungs to the tissues and removes the or takes the carbon dioxide from the tissues to the lungs, and finally from the lungs the carbon dioxide is flushed out. So it also provides or carries the nutrients to the periphery, like from the heart. It takes all the nutrients from the GIT and then to the heart, and from the heart it takes all the nutrients to all the target tissues, and it takes the waste products away from the tissues. And the blood can be filtered at the kidneys and at some other organs like the liver. The muscular tissue, it provides movement. Definitely the muscles, they contract and extend. It's a very basic concept. I think a layman knows that a muscle can contract and relax. There are different types. We classify all the muscular tissue of the body into smooth, skeletal, and cardiac tissue. The cardiac muscle is wholly and solely present in the cardiovascular system. The skeletal muscles, they are sometimes referred to as the visceral distribution of the muscles, the skeletal muscles that enable you to move. The smooth muscles, they are present in the blood vessels and the viscera. So all the organs, they have the smooth muscles. The cardiac muscles, they are in the heart, and the skeletal muscles, they are in the rest of the body. Now, the smooth muscles and the cardiac or the skeletal muscles, they are different in their appearance. Like the skeletal muscle and the cardiac muscles, they are striated muscles, they have striatas, but the smooth muscles, they are deficient of the striatas. So smooth muscles, they are involuntary, normally found in walls of the hollow organs and blood vessels. They have spindle-shaped cells, one oval-shaped nucleus. The skeletal muscles, they are under the voluntary control, cigar-shaped cells, multinucleated, located on cell uh, periphery, and they are striated. They have the striations. Cardiac muscles, they are involuntary, found in heart, violet-shaped fibers, intercalated discs to synchronize contraction. Uh, there's, there is a concept that is called as syncytium. So I don't know if you know it, but right now I'm going to tell you or share it with you because when I was studying about the cardiac system, there's a law that is called as all or none law. All or none. Like it is for the contraction of the cardiac muscles that either all of the cardiac muscles will contract or either none of the cardiac muscle will contract. So all or none law. So in this concept, they told us that the heart acts as a functional syncytium, like as a one unit, as a single unit. So this property is only for the cardiac muscles, that if you stimulate one cardiac muscle, the action potential will travel throughout all the cardiac muscles and the heart will collectively contract as a single unit. The nervous tissue consists of the cells called the neurons. Basically, the neuron is considered to be the structural and the functional unit of the nervous system. Uh, its function is to detect and transmit electrical signals. In the body, the communication usually can be chemical based or sometimes it can be electricity based or action potential based. So nervous tissue itself works on the chemical basis. So one can say that all things are like mediated chemically, but yet this type of tissue, the nervous tissue, has electroexcitability or excitability. So the parts of the neuron, there can be a cell body, which is also called as a soma, and they can be dendrites and axons. Now this is a pseudo unipolar neuron, which we are looking at. Uh, Basically, we are looking at the axon over here. We are also looking at the dendrites, the cell body having the nucleus, and these blue sheath is the myelin sheath, and these are the terminal tubules or buttons. Talking about the tissue repair, uh, there are a few terms that you should know: inflammation, regeneration, and the factors that affect the tissue repair, like nutrition, good blood circulation, and condition of the wound. These are very basic and very integral concepts, and one can understand them very easily because uh, for example, if you want to construct something, if you want to construct a building, you need some building material. You need bricks, you need cement, you need water, you need sand, you need uh, rest of the stuff. So it is very similar in the body also. Like whenever there is a need of a repair, you need some components and definitely you need some workers to work. Like you need a mason to construct a home. You need different cells in the body, like the fibroblasts, they will be needed to make the fibrin, or the protein is needed and the cells, they will produce the protein, and things keep on going like that. So the membranes, they can be epithelial membrane, connective tissue, the cutaneous tissue, mucous tissue, serous and synovial tissue. The synovial is for secretion of synovial fluid in the joints. Serous is for secretion of serous fluid in or around the organs. Mucous membrane, as if you have in the nose and in the mouth. Cutaneous layer in the respiratory system. Connective tissue definitely present all over the body, and epithelial tissue. Homeostasis, this is the first concept that I studied in physiology. So basically, maintenance of the internal environment. The human body is so efficient that it tries to maintain the internal environment with the help of different tissues, with the help of different systems, and with the help of different organs. So homeostasis is the maintenance of internal environment of the body. That includes the temperature, that includes the pH, that includes different like heart rate and respiratory rate and ionic balance and things like that. So constancy of body's internal environment, it represents a relatively stable condition within limited range, maintained primarily by neural and hormonal control system. Now, talking about the body systems, organizational levels are chemical, cellular, tissue, organ system, and organism. Organ systems and body systems make up the entire organism. The skeletal system, it consists of the bones, the cartilage, the joints, and the ligaments. From anatomical point of view and from physiological point of view, it supports the body, it protects the vital organs, it provides the movements, it produces blood cells and stores fats and minerals. So it supports the body, definitely provides a framework for the body, protects the vital organs, like your skull is protecting your brain, your rib cage is protecting your heart and lung, your pelvis is protecting your inner organs, uh, and your vertebra is protecting your spinal cord. It provides movement, definitely. It provides the anchoring or anchoring points or the site of attachment for different muscles, so as to increase their mechanical advantage or increase their efficiency, so it enables you to move. It produces blood cells. The bone marrow inside the bone in adults, the long bones or other bones, they have this red bone marrow that is a source of erythropoiesis, the formation of RBCs throughout the life. Not throughout the life, definitely in the adults, but there are only a few bones that remains active for this function throughout the life, like the vertebrae. All the cancellous bones, they or trabecular bone, they contain this red bone marrow throughout the life. But in the long bones or in the compact bones, this red bone marrow, it is replaced with the fat tissue, and they stop the production of RBCs or erythropoiesis in the later stages of life, like after third or fourth decade of life. And definitely it stores fats and minerals, like calcium is being stored to the bones, and whenever needed, the calcium from the bone is taken by the body. So they also act as a reservoir or storage house of the calcium, other minerals. uh, for fats, I told you that fat is being stored to the bone in place of the red bone marrow. The muscular system, the skeletal muscles, their related facial structures, tendons, and aponeurosis, they are considered to be the part of anatomy. And in physiology, their function is to provide movement and help move substances, produces heat, and maintains the posture. Integumentary system, the skin system, anatomy, you have the skin, the hairs and nails, and skin glands. In physiology, we look at different functions, like they provide protection. Uh, the skin is the largest organ of the body, like it's almost 25 meters. If you look at the surface area, it's almost 25 meters, and it protects the body from the external environment, absorbs, definitely. A lot of things can be absorbed by the skin, like you apply some ointment, you apply some medicine, and it gets absorbed to the skin. Definitely some creams also. uh, Sensation, definitely all your sensations, they are not the special but the general sensations, they are carried by the skin. The sensations like temperature, hot and cold, vibration, touch, pain, pressure, they can all be felt by the skin and transmitted to the higher centers. uh, it also has a function which is called as thermoregulation, like body temperature regulation. So thermoregulation, the skin tries to maintain the temperature of the body. Sometimes there is sweating, which is also called as perspiration, so in order to cool your body. Or sometimes there can be no sweating, so or sometimes there can be restriction or impedance of blood flow to the skin, just as to conserve the heat. Waste elimination with sweat, some wastes are also secreted. Vitamin D synthesis, uh, it is good to call it the activation of vitamin D, because The activated form of vitamin D is 125 dihydroxycholecalciferol. So this vitamin D3, it gets activated into the skin. Definitely upon exposure with the sunlight, the ultraviolet rays, they cause this activation of vitamin D, and the activated form is really very important, because if the vitamin D is not activated, the transport or the delivery of the calcium from the GIT to the bones, it becomes impossible. And definitely the immunity. So I was telling you about the vitamin D3. This is one important point that, being a healthcare professional, you should know and you should tell to your patients. That is that exposure to sunlight is really very necessary, and it is very essential for the kids also. So this vitamin D3, it becomes activated, and definitely if you want strong bones, then you need this form of vitamin D3, and definitely you also need the supply of calcium or intake of the calcium. Nervous tissue, in anatomy we look at the brain and the spinal cord, we look at the meninges. These meninges are the coverings of the central nervous system. There is, from outside in, there is dura mater, there is arachnoid matter, and there is pia matter. So dura, arachnoid, and pia, or from inside out, there is pia, arachnoid, and dura mater. There's a three meninges. They protect the brain and spinal cord, and there is some fluid which is called as cerebrospinal fluid inside these meninges, especially in the subarachnoid space. Then there are cranial and spinal nerves, and there are special senses that are specialized to the central nervous system. In physiology, we look at their functions, like they provide the sensory input. I told you about all the sensory information that is coming from the skin. Uh, Normally, we divide these sensations or senses into two parts. Like, first, I told you about the general senses. General senses are those senses that are present on almost all the body parts. But the specialized senses, uh, there are specialized system for these senses. If you want to sense them, or if you need these senses, you need some special organs. For example, you can only uh, see through your eyes, you cannot see through your nose and ears or rest of the body. You can listen from your ears or hear from your ears, technically saying. You can hear from your ears, but you cannot hear from your eyes and your nose. Same, you can taste from your tongue, but not from your nose or from eyes or ears. So this is the reason why they are called as the specialized senses. uh, Interpretive functions, definitely the brain has a lot of functions. Higher brain functions includes interpretation of different facts and figures. Motor output, it enables us to move. And higher mental processes and emotional responses, like thinking, computations and calculations, prediction, love, fear, and some other emotions. The endocrine system, very remarkable system in the body. Every system in the body is remarkable, but endocrine system is, you can say, it's a system that just gives the body a kick whenever the body needs a kick. So this endocrine system, it gives a kick or a boost to the systems. In anatomy, we look at the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, now look at the nomenclature. Hypo means below, and thalamus is a part of the brain. So hypothalamus, the thing that is below the thalamus. The pituitary, it has two divisions, the anterior and the posterior pituitary. The pineal gland, thyroid and the parathyroid, thymus, hormones, adrenals, pancreatic islets, ovaries, and testes. In physiology, we look at the hormone production. Now, hormones are secretions that are secreted into the blood. They can be endocrine gland or exocrine glands, uh, the glands having a duct, or the glands that secrete the secretion directly into the blood. Uh, Hormone production and secretion, metabolic regulation, this T3 and T4 level, triiodothyronine and tetraiodothyronine, these are from the thyroid gland. So they regulate the body metabolic rate, or BMR, or basal metabolic rate. So you might have seen people having warmer body temperature or you might have seen people having colder body temperature, or sometimes you have seen very lean persons, and uh, they tell you that okay, they eat a lot of stuff but they remain slim. And on the other hand, you have met people that say that no, I take only two slices in the morning, but look at me, I'm gaining fat and I'm getting big. So basically this is because of the abnormality, or you can say a disturbance in the hormone system. And a lot of systems like can get disturbed, like females can have weird also because of these hormones. So hormones are very important, and a lot of emotions are also associated with the hormones. They have the metabolic regulation, stress adaptation, chemical composition, and body fluid volume regulation. Definitely they tell you what chemical is needed. Now interesting thing is that these hormones, they are somewhat long acting. Like a few of them are short acting, that whenever they are released like adrenaline, they create immediate responses, but most of them are like when they're released, a response is awaited, like a lot of time is needed for them to work. And the reproductive processes in the reproductive system, uh, anatomically we have gonads and ducts, sex organs and glands, and physiologically they are responsible for the production of offsprings and regulates the reproduction. It is very surprising to know that human chromosomes, they whenever there's a fusion, like whenever uh, there's the zygote formation or the fusion, what happens is that the sperm and the egg, they get united or they get fused. So uh, half of the chromosomes, they come from the father, and half of the chromosome, they come from the mother, and this is how they become equal, like 50% from. And this is the because of the process of meiosis, the cell division that you might know, the mitosis and meiosis. In mitosis, the offsprings are exact copies of the parents, but in meiosis, the offsprings, they have half the number of chromosomes as compared to the parents. uh, Cardiovascular system, anatomically saying, we have the heart, blood vessels, and blood, but physiologically, transportation of the substances, blood mediated transport, like a lot of materials like medicine or the food, it is transported into the body with the help of the blood. Protection by fighting disease, definitely the WBCs, white blood cells, the lymphocytes, monocytes, eosinophils, basophils, uh, they all are there to protect your body from pathogens and other noxious stimuli. They combat hemorrhage. Definitely, the blood has, as I already told you in the previous slides, that we have platelets, and these platelets, they are responsible for the formation of a platelet plug and uh, production of hemorrhage or stopping the bleeding. The lymphatic system, anatomically saying, we have lymph and lymph vessels, lymph organs and glands, lymph nodes and lymphocytes. But physiologically, it provides immunity and maintains homeostasis. This lymph, it is basically the interstitial fluid, the fluid that is present between the cells. This lymph is being separated from when the blood is pumped into the blood vessels. What happens that the lymph, it oozes out from the blood vessels slow and steady, and then it is recollected through these lymph uh, like vessels, and it is carried to the lymph nodes where they screen it for potential problems, and then it goes back to the heart for recirculation. The respiratory system, anatomically saying, we have the nose and the nasal cavity, the pharynx and larynx, trachea, bronchi, bronchioles, and alveoli, lungs, and the diaphragm. But physiologically, we, if you look at the function, there is exchange of the gases, as I told you earlier, the carbon dioxide and the oxygen. Olfaction is for smell, produces sound for phonation, and maintains the homeostasis. Definitely, these concentration of these gases in the blood, the oxygen and carbon dioxide, can lead to acidity or alkalinity in the blood. And the normal pH of the blood is from 7.35 to 7.45, and this narrow index is being maintained through a lot of systems, and one such system is the respiratory system. Now talking about the digestive system, Anatomically, we have the oral cavity, the pharynx and esophagus, stomach, small and large intestines, pancreas, liver and gallbladder. But physiologically, ingestion is taking up of the food substance, digestion, breaking up into small pieces, absorption, the core or the real element of energy is being taken up from the food to the body, and defecation, definitely the waste products or the fecal matter is being defecated. Urinary system, we have kidneys, ureters, urethra and urinary bladder. Anatomically and functionally, it eliminates the waste and foreign substances and regulates the blood pressure. Talking about the body compass, how to move through the body, how to look at the body, how to navigate through the body. So we are going to describe the anatomic position, body cavities, abdominal quadrants, abdominal regions and body planes. We are going to state terms used to describe locations and directions of particular body structures and define body regions. Tools used to determine the directions, positions and locations of the structure. Very important, definitely we need some reference point. So there can be absolute terms, there can be relative terms. In anatomy, both these terms are essential equally. So anatomical position, planes of the body, body cavities, abdominal quadrants and regions, regional and directional designations and body positions we are going to discuss now. This is the anatomical position that you're looking right now. The body is upright and facing forward. The arms are at the side, palms they are facing forward with thumbs to the side, feet about hip distance apart and toes pointing forward. Now if you look at this position, this is uh, called as the anatomical position, and this is very important because all the body movements, they are considered to be starting from this position. So this is considered to be the reference position. For example, if you want to look at elbow flexion and extension, or body or trunk flexion and extension, or side bending or rotation, so this position will be considered as the normal reference or starting position or a 0 point of the body. So this is really very important. Talking about the body cavities, the body has a lot of cavities. There can be the dorsal cavities and the ventral cavities. The dorsal on the back side, the ventral on the anterior side. So the dorsal cavities, the cranial and the spinal cavity. The cranial cavity, it contains the brain. The spinal cavity, it contains the spinal cord. And in the ventral cavities, you have thoracic and abdominopelvic cavity. For thoracic cavity, it contains the respiratory and the cardiac organs, and abdominopelvic cavity, it contains the abdominal and pelvic cavities. Now, if you look at these, the dorsal cavities of the cranium and the spinal cord, you can see the brain and the spinal cord. But in the ventral cavities, you can see the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity of the pelvic cavity. The abdominal quadrants. Quad stands or quads means four. So one line that lies horizontally and one line that lies vertically intersecting at the umbilicus. It divides the abdomen or abdominal region into four quadrants. One is called as the right upper quadrant, the region of this liver, left upper quadrant, the region of the stomach, right lower quadrant, the region of the appendix, and left lower quadrant, the region of the descending colon. In this picture, you can also see these are the 9 parts of the abdomen, basically 9 regions of the abdomen. They are discussed in the next slide. You can see the right hypochondric, epigastric, left hypochondric, right lumbar, umbilical, left lumbar, right iliac, hypogastric and left iliac. Now if you look at this previous picture, it is really very easy to understand. Now umbilical is for umbilicus. Now this is hypogastric because it is below the stomach, epigastric because it includes the region of the stomach and above the stomach, right hypochondriac below this liver, left hypochondriac below this liver, this part of the liver, right lumbar because of this lumbar region, left lumbar because of this lumbar region, and then right iliac because of the iliac bone, or left iliac from the left iliac bone. So it is very easy. If you know, or if you ever read it somewhere, definitely it makes sense that where this segment could lie. Talking about the body planes, the body planes are transparent flat surfaces that divide the body into three dimensions. These are just descriptive terms. There is no such thing that divides your body right now or my body right now, because in anatomy we need some reference points. That is the reason these are some imaginary lines that are made for quite an understanding of the structures. So there can be up or down, left or right, or front and back. They are dividing your body into superior, inferior, or cranial caudal, right or left, and anterior and posterior. So planes, they are at right angle to each other. Now if you look at this picture, now you are looking at the sagittal plane. The sagittal, if it is in the midline or dividing your body into right and left, then it will be called as the mid-sagittal plane. And the purpose of this plane is to divide your body into right and left equal halves. The frontal plane, I teach my student like this, that the frontal divides the body into front and back. So frontal planes is like over here, it dissects the body into anterior and posterior parts, and the transverse, if you look at this picture, the transverse, it cuts the body into cranial and caudal parts. The sagittal plane or the median plane bisects the body from front to back and divides into the right and left sections. Frontal plane is also called as the coronal plane, bisects the body side to side and divides it into anterior and posterior sections. And transverse plane, which is also called as horizontal plane, it bisects the body horizontally and divides it into superior and inferior sections. Now, definitely, there are some terms that are important, like superior is on top of the side, inferior is on below side, and the anterior and the posterior, which is anterior on the front, posterior on the back side. The distal is away from the midline, the proximal is towards the midline or close to the center, the medial is again towards the inner side or the medial side, and the lateral is away from the midline or the center. Uh, from directional terms, in left to the left, the subject's left, the right to the right, the subject's right, superior, which is considered to be the cranial or cephalic, situated above or towards the head, and inferior, which is also called as the caudal, it is situated below or towards the tail or towards the end. Anteriorly pertaining to the front, posterior, which is also called as dorsal, pertaining to the back, medial, oriented towards or near midline, lateral, oriented farther away from the midline. Proximal, it is near to the point of reference, usually towards the trunk. Distal, it is farther from the point of reference, usually away from the midline. Superficial, it is considered to be on the top, pertaining to the outside of the surfaces. Deep, pertaining to or situated at the center of the body. Terms that are related to organs and structures. Terms are used to describe anatomic relationships among organs and regions within an organ. For example, medulla, it means that the inner region of an organ or structure. Cortex, the outer region of an organ or structure. And the lumen, space located within with a hollow or tubular structure. If you look at these body regions, this is the cephalic region or cranial region, this is thoracic region or the trunk region, abdominal region, pelvic region, thigh region, or the pedial region, the hand region. So these are different regions for just to describe, to make things easy, because if you write something on the paper, you need to be very precise, so as like, it is very important that you get what the other person is trying to tell you, or the other person can understand or can pinpoint the direction or pinpoint the location of the structure that you refer to. So this is the reason that you have to identify that 6 inches distal to the elbow joint or medial to the elbow joint, or in the thigh region, or in the abdominal region, or in the cranial region. So just for easy understanding and in order to see things clearly. Now in this picture we are looking from the back side of all those regions that we discussed previously. The regional terms are: cephalic is used for head, or sometimes people call it as cephalic. So it is for head. The cranial is for upper skull. The temporal is for the side of the skull. These are the temporal regions. The facial is for the face. The frontal is towards the forehead. The orbital is for eye, or ophthalmic means pertaining to the eye. Zygomatic is for the upper cheek. The nasal is for nose, the buccal is for oral cavity, the cheek wall within the mouth, and the oral is for mouth. Otic is for ear, mandibular is for lower jaw, occipital is for lower back skull. This is the back of my head. This is the region, that is occipital region. Cervical is for the neck, nuchal means pertaining to the nape or back of the neck. Thoracic is for the chest area between the neck and the diaphragm. Abdominal is for abdomen, superior region of the abdominopelvic cavity. Pelvic is for pelvis, inferior region of the abdominopelvic cavity. Pectoral is for breast area or upper anterior thorax. Costal is for ribs. Umbilical is for navel or central abdomen pertaining to the umbilical cord. The vertebral refers to the spinal column. The sacral refers to the sacrum of the spinal column. Coccygeal, bottom of the spine column or the coccyx area, upper region of the gluteal cleft. The lumbar is for lower back or loin area between the ribs and the hip. The gluteal is for buttock region formed by the gluteal muscles. Sacroiliac between the sacrum and the pelvic bones. Perineal between the anus and genitals. In upper extremity, we are having the clavicular for the collarbone, the acromial top of the shoulder, the scapular, the shoulder blade, the deltoid, the curve of the shoulder formed by the deltoid muscles, axillaries for the armpit, brachial is for the arm between the shoulder and the elbow, antebrachial is for the forearm between the wrist and the elbow, and cubital is for the elbow. Antecubital is front of the elbow in the band of the elbow. Carpal is for wrist. Palmar is anterior surface or palm of the hand. Volar means pertaining to the palm. And pollex is for thumb. Digital refers to the fingers or toes. In the lower extremity, we refer to the groin, the area between thigh and abdomen, the pubic for the genital area over the pubic symphysis, the coxal for hip, femoral for thigh between the hip and knee, patellar for the kneecap, popliteal for the posterior knee fossa, crural for leg between the knee and the ankle, and calf for the posterior leg. The sural means pertaining to the calf, the muscle or the peripheral heart, the tarsal for the ankle, the pedal for foot or feet, calcaneal is for heel, dorsum is on the top of the foot, the heel of the foot is on the underside, and dorsum is towards the upper side. The plantar, bottom or sole of the foot, volar means pertaining to the sole of the foot, hallux for the greater toe or big toe, the digital for toes or fingers, phalangeal means pertaining to the toes and fingers. So that is the end of the lecture. Thank you very much for being with me. Have a good day. Thank you very much.